welcome to FedScoopTV. I'm Colby Hochmuth. I'm sitting here with Daniel Climo, who's Director of Sales for Red Hat at Emergent. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
So Dan, what are some of the trends you're seeing in open source technology?
So the top three that we're seeing right now, cloud being the obvious choice, but then also big data and mobility, each of which are enabled by open source components. So Linux, KVM, JBoss. And then looking at the database side, like a PostgreSQL and a NoSQL. And so a lot of the conversations that we're having with our customers on a regular basis at Emergent is, I think customers are starting to realize that it's not a question of whether or not open source is a good option, but more so, how do they take advantage of so much innovation and so much collaboration that's out there today? And open source for a lot of agencies has become this hybrid decision maker in many ways that not only does it manage the business, but it also manages the operation side as well. And so I think customers are starting to realize that it's not necessarily about name brand technology anymore, but it's about supporting the mission.
And what are some areas in government that you've seen the quickest adoption of open source technology?
So from adoption standpoint, I think what we're starting to see is more so in the form of net new programs, net new projects. What I will say, there's definitely been this seismic shift that customers are not so quick to go down the path of proprietary technology anymore. They're starting to look at open source as a viable, secure, and cost-effective solution that just wasn't there 5-10 years ago. And so in many ways, from an Emergent standpoint and from a reseller standpoint, that puts us in a great position. And if you look at, whenever we go through times of budget uncertainty, open source has quickly become that go-to approach. And then you look at the fact that more than 40 federal agencies have already created policies that are promoting the benefits of adopting and using open source software. And so not only are they're talking about the highlighting the benefits, but they're also answering meaningful questions that are being posed by our IT professionals today. And if you look at something like crowdsourcing, which is a relatively new term in the industry today, but the concept of crowdsourcing is just collaboration. And I think when you work together as a team, I think the end result is typically going to be something that's of benefit to everybody.
Right. So what can the private sector learn from the way that government has incorporated open source technology?
Well, open source, by its very nature, I think promotes collaboration, especially around federal initiatives. If you take Red Hat's flagship product, which is the operating system, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, if you take that as an example, that technology, as we speak, is being used around the world to support some of the most mission-critical systems and applications. That technology started out as a community project called Fedora. So I think that's a great story that we can certainly tell to our customers. The private sector itself, I think, can benefit in two areas. One is the technology area. Again, looking at a technology that's out there right now called Security Enhanced Linux, SE Linux. That was a technology that was developed by a government agency that enforced mandatory access controls. Red Hat later contributed to the code, and they ended up kind of adopting the technology, wrapping it into their operating system, their virtualization, and their cloud technologies, and it's being deployed around the world today. And then the second area where I think the private sector can certainly benefit from what the government's doing is around secure supply chain. And what I mean by that is if we have customers today that are considering using open source in a production environment, they want to make sure that they're purchasing that software from a reputable source. I use the example of buying a car. If I'm going to go out and buy a car tomorrow, I can go online and maybe use a website that I don't necessarily trust, or I can go to a car dealership where I'm going to feel a little bit more trust and I feel it's a reputable place to go. So I use that example just to make the point that there's a lot of open source variants out there right now. There's a lot of net new projects and a lot of great ideas with great intentions, but I think you just have to be careful because you have so many options that not necessarily every technology has been certified on the latest hardware. And so for customers, you want to mitigate any risk and vulnerability before you do deploy in a production setting.
Right. And so looking ahead, what do you see as sort of the future in open source technology adoption?
Well, a couple of things. One, the community's not going anywhere. If anything, it's getting larger, it's getting stronger. I talked about crowdsourcing, the ability for people to bounce ideas off of one of each other is much easier today, just with technology alone. And then open source has enabled our customers and other public sector customers to make decisions quicker, be more flexible, and obviously drive down their cost. Thirdly, I think we're seeing more and more mission critical applications being deployed. The as a service models, your PaaS and your infrastructure, those types of service models, they enable rapid delivery to not only the end user, but our guys who are in the field, the warfighter. And so I think everyone benefits from that. And then lastly, just like I said, net new projects. I think we've gone past the tipping point now of open source kind of being this, we don't really want to talk about open source being in a production environment. I think we're past that, and I think we're seeing that with the types of projects and migrations that are Emergent we're looking at, and then also working with our partners as well.
Great. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This is FedScoopTV. I'm Colby Hockmuth.